morning. My name is Richard Miller, and I welcome you to Never Not Here and wherever you'll find this video embedded, hopefully in a wide range of sites and blogs and places that have interest in speaking about life. Many of you know I do a lot of Skype talks. I bring in guests from all over the world on Skype, and it makes it so easy effortless actually to talk to anyone. There's no scarcity of connection. And then sometimes I travel, and it's a great luck that I get invited, and I'm kind of given a room and say, okay, video us and see what you come up with. And I'm in West Virginia. We just finished the TAT weekend, Truth and Transmission, Richard Rowe's Friends. And it's an amazing experience, an amazing solidarity of a group of young men and that started to visit Richard Rowe's and bonded with him and with each other. And it's kind of amazing when your friends for 10, 20 years, even more, are still your friends and still expressing solidarity and support of living the best life that you can possibly live. And so we wanted to speak with a couple of people the morning after, and so please help me welcome Shawn Nevins. Hi,
Richard.
Shawn. I've kind of looked over the shoulder of a lot of people in being a host and, just making this together, that I'm somehow put things on TV, and I'm somehow projected myself into the formula, that I'm in a lot of conversations and I'm facilitating people and also questioners. I'm facilitating questioners to ask questions, and so I watch those questions. And somehow I see that some very simple things are stated, and somehow they transmit or they compute as very complicated. And I would just call that a really great ground of confusion. And I'm always wondering if this pointing or teaching can be somehow economized or made somehow more simple.
Well, to me, it goes back to the theme of this weekend, the heart of the matter. And really, it's about every person finding their way to simply feel what they long for. That's the way that I would put it to someone. If you can do that, everything else will take care of itself. The path will fold out from that longing.
Can we just go by mundane longings? In other words, because we think we long for a college education, we think we long for a motorcycle, and we want a good relationship and feel our sexuality. So those are the things we think. Does that naturally roll into I don't know, more authentic longing for an authentic life, to find who we are and not. It's so easy to model somebody else's ideas of what a good citizen and what a bright person is. And then how do we become authentic and find what is our... Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that the first thing that came to mind is Richard Rowe used to talk about, he said, I'm trying to age a few young people. Because what happens in life is that we do exactly what you're saying, that we follow these, what turn out to be more mundane longings. We go down the path, we follow the role that's laid out by the models that we know, which say, well, I'm going to get an education, going to get a job, going to get married, going to have my kids, going to save for their education, going to save for my retirement, And that's what rolls out. And at some point along the line, a lot of people start to ask, well, where's this headed? What did I really want all along? What am I aiming for? So the short answer is no. And
well, we wouldn't be following these roles unless we were promised something, We were promised that these roles are actually a means to a beautiful end.
Yeah, I wonder about, did anyone promise us anything, or did we create, did we create that promise from dream, from longing? And the only materials that we had to build our vision from were the models that we had around us. So what does retirement mean? People talk about the golden years. What does it mean what is the phrase golden years? What is the feeling that brings into one's mind?
Well, I want these to be the golden years. And sure, we've been promised, get an education, you'll get a good job, get a good career. Get into the society, participate with what's happening here. And the game is get a high salary.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Of course, I can only look at my own life and what were the things that were promised to me. And when I look back upon it, it's as if no one ever said what the game was all about. Nobody ever said what the end goal was supposed to be. It's as if we were just all caught on a slide or on a amusement park ride, a roller coaster that was headed somewhere, and all we were doing was looking around and not really speaking deeply about what was happening, but just kind of smiling and nodding our heads and, yeah, here we go.
Everything's understood.
Everything's understood. Yeah, it's a great way to phrase it. Yeah, what's the word? Implicit.
Implicit, right.
As opposed to explicit. When you start to have an explicit conversation with someone about, well, what do you really want? Where are you headed? And people get really vague, get really fuzzy about what's the point of it? And they don't
Maybe
really
that's
like
a good way to raise a child, is to say, let's take the implicit and make it explicit, and just see how deep is the implicit. Where's the edge of it? And then we'll just explain it, or not because it's right or wrong, but just we're probing it, and it's a way to do it is just to bring it out of the unconscious.
Yeah, I think I don't have kids, but I work with kids, and I love those kids who ask questions. I love that, but it doesn't mesh well with the way that a lot of school is laid out. You need to absorb as opposed to probe. Yeah, I agree with you.
So, in other words, in the normal school, it's okay to ask questions, but then the teacher has to give the answer. Right?
Teacher has to give the answer, and at a certain point, we're short on time here. You need to learn what you need to learn for the test. So let's move on. That's an interesting point you raised there, Richard. But we need to get on with our lesson.
Right, I'm preparing you for the SAT exam,
yeah,
SAT tests.
Sure. Yeah, but there are a handful of schools that give kids more freedom.
I talk about that because I heard of one and I was so blown away that I made sure to get an interview and get it on the site.
That's cool. Yeah. There's a school in Louisville called the Louisville Classical Academy, and they came out. I do environmental education, so a lot of schools come to where I work, and I take them out on nature hikes and that kind of thing. So I get to see a lot of different models, a lot of different children, and Louisville Classical Academy just impressed me as kids who come out and ask questions. They're not looking. Most kids come out and they want to be entertained.
Yeah,
they're used to.
Certainly, you're there, and you can determine. You can just immediately see the sharpness of the kids.
Yeah.
Have they been dulled, or have they been sharpened?
Well, 85% of kids seem to me like they've been forced into a role in a system. And then there's that 15% that are either in an alternative school, like this classical academy that I mentioned. Certainly the Waldorf schools, they encourage that sort of exploration of children to more follow their passions, try to guide those passions in some way.
It's a germination of passion, whereas the rest of us just have it as a theory. It's a concept passion. And we really, really don't know what our interest is or what, It's just kind of like the lesser of evils.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids need schooling. I'm certainly not. Yeah. I'm not saying you just let them run wild in the library and do whatever they want to do. They need guidance to discover their passions, but they need a lot of freedom. But those are just my observations.
I'll bet you, 85% are kind of dulled in some way, trying to fit themselves in and feeling a little awkward, like I don't fit this model, I don't fit this curriculum, I'm not that. How come I'm not interested? Maybe I have to try harder, so I have to bend myself harder. And then there's going to be a reaction to that, right? There's somehow going to be a compensation and a reaction. And that compensation could be like overeating or binging or, we're having a massive childhood diabetes. We're having overweight or obesity. We're having sluggishness and stuff that attention deficit. And these things maybe are compensation for squelching or not really firing up somebody's interest.
You could be right. That's a little beyond my anything more than speculation on my part. To look at my life, what did I do? Well, I played the game, and then it wasn't until I got into graduate school that I actually began to question, why am I doing this? Do I really want to wind up like the people who are around me? Is this the model that I want my life to be? So it was years before I began to get frustrated and disappointed with the system.
Believed in the system, for a long time.
Absolutely.
I maybe I believed or not believed in it, but I knew I was a very bad player at it. And so then I turned all that on me and said, well, I'm inadequate here, I'm inadequate there, I can't spell, I can't speak, I can't write, I can't talk, and feeling like a lump of coal.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing of people that don't fit in society. In other words, society, it doesn't fit for everybody. And maybe it's only the ones that, who knows, maybe it's only the ones that are way out of touch with their own passion that fit in society, and they're able to pedal anybody's bicycle.
I don't know. There are. My mom used to talk about. She's had some periods of great unhappiness in her life, and she used to talk about looking around at other people and saying, "Well, those people are happy. Why can't I be like those people?" And they were just ordinary people, people with jobs and children, just like her. But it seemed to her that they were in some way they were happier than her. But I think practically everyone has some feeling of things just aren't quite right. Because if they didn't, the whole system would grind to a halt. Because from what I see, the whole system is based upon absorbing, whether it's knowledge or just material goods. And that's why the economy keeps running, is because we're always taking in, we're always using up, trying to, to say it theoretically or allegorically, we're trying to fill this hole, this dissatisfaction with things from the outside. So does anybody really fit into that system? Could anyone actually fill themselves completely? Apparently not even the billionaires can do that, the ones who have all the resources available to them. They simply get it's an infinitely deep hole inside of us.
Sometimes I think of life and I think, okay, plant life. It's always here and now. The roots are stuck in the ground, doesn't move around. It grows. Then animal life got liberated from place because it doesn't have any roots. They got paws instead, or gills and fins. They can swim around. Animal life doesn't have a place, but they're always now. And then mankind comes along and has abstracting capacity. And he's liberated not only from place, he's got legs to move around, but he's also got mental apparatus and an abstraction where he can focus attention on what he calls yesterday and tomorrow, so he's not even here. And then somehow there's a testimony that some kind of an awakening can happen. And then we're not even here and there, we're everywhere, or we're even more free. I don't know.
But it's an interesting point I've thought a lot about, because I spent a lot of time outdoors, a lot of time close to plant life, if you will. I was out recently in California, and I got to see the coastal redwoods, and I literally had the experience of leaning into the presence of this tree, which has been there for 900 years, let's say, and feeling that just intense. It was a depth, but it was also, I hate to use the word vibration, but some kind of energy of this being that's been in this place. It's almost like just a simple wisdom from being there for so long.
It's a deep sense of place.
A deep sense of place.
We don't have it at all.
And then I wonder, here I am, a human being, and do I feel in myself something similar to what I feel as I lean in close to this tree? And I say, I do, but there is this added bit of awakening. It's like the tree is in a sleep enlightened being, and somehow people, we use the term awake. Well, they're awake to their...
Awake enlightened being.
Yeah, they're both enlightened, but somehow the tree is... It just is, and yet a person is, and there's this awareness of that isness. But maybe the language...
tree is more timeless. It's totally timeless, right?
Or it's a language barrier. I can't speak tree.
Uh-huh.
I can't, and the tree can't speak human. So all we can, there's a sense of presence, but we're just not quite sure what's the difference. Somehow feels different.
One time I was sleeping on a mountaintop, and at night it was kind of windy, and I was right up there looking over the tops of all the pine trees, and I realized everyone had a different resonance, natural frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So each of their peaks were kind of going, totally different, and everyone was totally individual. Because I would look at it before as a forest. It's like a unity there, and really, every one of them spoke to me, and it was kind of a mystical experience.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah. Because, the trees are different, if in no other way, simply by age, and their place in the sun. They are all slightly different.
I really hate that expression, so-and-so had his final experience. Is that just the introducers that say that, or do actually teachers say that?
I
mean, we should put R.I.P. on their forehead, right? Rest in peace. That was your final experience.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it goes back. Some of that's I think the tradition that people grow up in, the spiritual tradition that they grow up in. It's like Bart Marshall was talking about. There was a moment in time after which I was different, and before which I didn't. I wasn't awakened.
I almost think that's damaging. You should hide that under the covers. It throws people for such a long loop. Anything that you say about an awakening, any description and all that kind of thing, to me, ideally it's timed. It's a one-on-one conversation where you're drawn to drop a phrase to someone or give a bit of a description, because in that moment you feel that the word, like it's a precious thing that shouldn't be used lightly, those words. Otherwise, they're interpreted in 100 different ways. And all kinds of conceptions. It's 1,000 to 1, It's 1,000 to 1 in my book, that 1,000 people go off not getting it. And one might just say, aha, bingo.
Yeah.
And maybe there's traditions that say that one was worth the 1,000 that were cast aside.
Yeah. It's something that people always want to know about, if nothing else. People are, well, could you, I remember being around Richard Rose, and it was, time and again in meetings and lectures, could you tell us about what happened to you? Could you tell us about this experience that you had?
I've heard it where people say, no, nothing happened, and there was no me to have it happen to. So then your question is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wrong-headed question.
Yeah. And to me, ideally, both of those answers they're tools. Every answer is a tool to try to convey something to someone.
I want to see effective tools.
Yeah.
But what is it? How do you like my analogy that then humans come along and they're abstract and they're not stuck to either time or place, and then some new cognition or not cognition, some kind of a seeing happens, and then I don't know. We're everywhere. There is no where. There's only here, right? Even those people that say omnipresent, there's no place except here. So omnipresent is not such a hot deal after all.
Well, if you get right down to it, our consciousness, it's like we're a funnel, is the way that I think about it. Our awareness is a funnel, and what can our awareness grasp of something infinite? Well, it can experience the here-ness, or the now-ness, or the is-ness, or the coming into being of being. It can feel that. The omnipresence or omnipotence, however you phrase that, is it's almost as if the human has to be moved aside in order to have that experience.
Omnipresence to me and omnipotence is kind of like a worshiping of the there and then. It's trying to say, okay, let's make a word up that includes all the spaces, and then let's just make a word up that nullifies all the spaces.
Oh, and you think that
would be better?
Here-ness,
that this is here. This is
nullify.
It. Yeah, let's get a here. I am that. To me, is two separations. I am a separation, and that is a separation. We are this. Whatever we is, it sounds plural, but who knows?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't.
This is not a separation, and we is not a separation.
I'm very. I would say it like this: there may be a moment in time that I would want to describe it as omnipresent. And there may be a moment of time where I would want to say it's here. I'm very reluctant to come down on one side or the other, because I see that there are problems with talking about being in the present moment. Because for a lot of people, that simply means enjoying that bite of food that they're chewing on. Is that what we mean by transcending, becoming something other than ourselves? Is that what we mean by moving the self aside to simply, like animal consciousness? Some people think, well, what we're trying to do is be like the dog. The dog runs freely, we think, through the field, chasing whatever its next whim is. Is that what we're aiming for? Is that what we want to do? Or do we want to become like a tree, simply being in place and absorbing the sunshine? I think those are conceptions.
Conceptions of presence.
Conceptions of presence.
And conceptions of not abstracting.
You know, I mean, we're not dogs. We're not trees. We are completely confused and complicated and
linguistic
human
beings.
beings.
We're linguistic beings,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So linguistic is just, in other words, a sound has an image with it. And that image is either useful to life and life affirming, or it's really life negating. In a way, we're human beings. In another way, we're all beings. Or we have that potential.
I was just going to say, possibly. Possibly we are. And that is, for some people, that's the longing, you know. And that may be a phrase that brings out the longing within them to want to know what the truth is. Is that possible? I have a feeling that it is, that may be true. Well, let's find out.
We know phenomena like resonance. We know phenomena, sometimes we call it transmission and so on. We can know phenomena of the Sangha. When two people are gathered together, we know this kind of thing, right? And we know the crowd mentality. We know the mob mentality.
Yeah.
We know that you can be in a mob and all of a sudden something will trigger off that's amazingly weird. Like, where did that come from? One time I was in New Orleans and in Carnival, and I was on the French Quarter there, and on some blocks it got crowded and more crowded and more crowded, and finally it went to a human gridlock where we were just jammed in there, and then I realized what trampling would be, because it was a whole different thing. We were just a cell in a spasmodic arm or something like that, in this arm of a human street. And it was like really scary. Not that people were mad or trying to hurt each other, but we were in a different structure that there was absolutely no control. And so we're in a sea of consciousness, and we are the tree. And let's just say the universe is evolving, and we're in that evolution. Now, I mean, that's just reflected through us. I mean, we say a lot of things like that there's no doer, that there's no free will, that the source is sourcing everything. I don't know. It's kind of like we're beating around that bush. And that maybe that's our game, you know, that's the game, that's the project that we've been given. I got the Richard Miller Project, and it's to express that consciousness.
You know, the first thing that came to mind was just choose carefully the crowds that you hang out in.
Yeah, really.
Because you don't want to evolve you don't want to devolve. Yeah, you want to evolve rather than devolve. So I think that there's certainly some, we have to employ some wisdom about where we wind up, who we associate with, or else we will wind up being trampled to death in a crowd and on some street in the French Quarter of New Orleans.
I guess you can come up with a stupid idea that says, somehow my absorption, or, energy healers. And you can have this concept that my contribution is that is my consciousness, because we say that a lot. The highest and best thing you can do is to free yourself from your own thoughts. And somehow that freedom is even reflected in the main square in Egypt. We say those kind of things, whether it's all hooey or just arrogance.
Well, I think that's a great attitude to have towards it, is what you're saying right now. Maybe it's true. I don't know. Just discover, find out, because we won't. There are many people who will sit around and have discussions late into the night while they're, having a nice whiskey. Maybe this is true. Maybe it's not. Maybe the life that I'm living right now is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels good if that was the case. But I maintain
that
that
was the case. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing that I maintain. If there was nothing else I could say, it would be that you can find out with certainty. Whatever you want to know, you can find out for certain. We don't have to live in speculation.
See, now we're onto something. Now this is a huge, immensely valuable couple of sentences that you've come up with. Maybe this is the point of our whole conversation, that this testimony. Say more about it.
Well, I don't know what can I elaborate upon, what I just said, except that I lived in complete unknowing about anything. Is what I'm doing what I should be doing? Does this have meaning? Am I living my destiny? I don't know. It's Tess spoke last night about is what is happening right now my will, thy will, or I don't know.
Of course I don't know, because it's all an overlay, isn't it? Isn't all that an overlay? Those judgments and those distinctions?
Find out
afterwards, right?
Find out.
Yeah.
You can discover, is there free will or not? Is there anything other than thy will? And that's what she was talking about, was beginning to look at what we do, what we think, what we feel on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis, and trying to figure out, is this my will? Or is it separate from me and I had nothing to do with it? Well, let's begin to look at the reality of our situation.
See, we talked a lot this weekend about free will and about effort and effortlessness. And those are, very closely related. For those that have the feeling that there's an effort, then they've got a will. And they need to will, whatever that effort is. That was the question that was brought up too. Well, what is effort actually? Action is there in effort, and action is there in no effort. That's a constant in the formula. Something's happening. But yet there's a perception that maybe there's a doer and there's a forcing, and then at another time there's a perception that it's a divine dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think the fundamental question in that statement is there a way to find out quickly, is this effortless? Is what's going on effortless? Is that true or not? That's what maybe that's what the person wants to know. And in my life, what I found was that it took a lot of effort to finally, for it to dawn upon me in my bones that it's all effortless. How does effortlessness dawn upon us? How do we, the human being, which is this thing in motion that has a level of abstraction slapped upon it? Well, how does that level of abstraction finally understand, without a doubt, what the true situation is? It took a lot of effort for me to do that.
Yeah. Okay, now here's a question. Can you know and realize effortlessness and still suffer?
Sure.
Suffering is effortless?
Sure. That's just another thing. It's nothing but another thing that comes up.
Because my proposal is that suffering is the effort. And when there's no suffering, there's of course no effort. I don't mean pain. I'm making a distinction between pain and suffering. And then there can certainly be pain.
Maybe we're just having a linguistic
pain, right?
Because immediately I think, well, the day that my mother passes away, there will be suffering, but it will just naturally arise. Now, maybe you would call that pain.
I'd call it pain because, like, when my mother died, I was celebrated. I said, finally, you did it. Finally, you made it.
Yeah. Well, that may happen to me. I don't know what's going to happen. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if I felt a lot of pain.
It was a huge joy for me.
Yeah. So perhaps the word that I would use that's equivalent to what I'm feeling about your term suffering would be anxiety or
absolutely,
angst.
Absolutely, you know.
And then I would say that there would still be moments of anxiety in my life simply from the pattern that I am.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe it's useful, but I mean, I've heard this suffering defined as like the distance between what is and what I want to be.
Yeah, I follow that.
The more that gets wider, the harder that suffers, and the closer that is together, the less that suffering bobs its head up. Yeah,
well, in that model, then that would be eliminated. Because, that's not to say that the
eliminated by effortlessness.
Yeah, that's not to say that the idea of, the way I think about things is, wouldn't it be nice? If there's something that's not actually happening right now, I think, well, wouldn't it be nice if the sun came out in a little while and it stopped raining on my head?
Right? And not a neediness, but a preference. It's
as opposed to...
And it didn't happen, so that's fine.
As opposed to, oh God, I hate this rain and
not another day of rain.
It's killing me. I've had many, many moments of that in my life.
Yeah, you don't live in Seattle.
Yeah. So all that kind of thing. Yeah, you get freed of that kind of. But not freed of preference.
I heard someone, preference is fine, I guess. I heard someone say that anxiety was a tool for protection, and it's how protection works. Because with anxiety, with every emotion, probably there's some kind of a contraction, or the body reacts to it in some way. There's some sensation. And then I've heard some other people say there's basically two things the body knows, Wow. And ow.
Yeah, I like that.
And so then those two things are like opening and contraction. So opening has growth, and opening is actually engendered by presence. I mean, and anxiety is a protection mode, and it works by squeezing, basically. I mean, it's a squeeze on everything, and the point is that it takes your energy that's used to run your body and throws it out to your arms and legs so you can do fight or flight. It's protection. It's very useful. And it's triggered by thoughts of fears. And so then that's how the whole mechanism works. It's very simple. But then if you're always in that squeeze, of course it's not very healthy, because there's no energy left to run the system. And it's probably not, there's no consciousness growth either, because all the attention is into thoughts and ideas, and it's not open in presence to allow some new thought or to see what's here, what's really here now.
Yeah, that goes back to me to reminds me of Douglas Harding, who he would say that if you just do his experiments, have realized this headlessness, then that takes care of all that. While other people say that, well, there's a certain amount of, we've got to work on some of this in order to free the mind up enough that it can focus on something other than anxiety and pain.
Right, free the mind, and then a lot of people will even say something like cellular memory, and say your body's in a pattern. Of course, it's in a pattern, but I think it can release in a moment. So I think it's more like, a community that's listening to only one radio station, and that radio station is your train of thought, which always says doom, 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 I'm not good enough, and naturally it squeezes on that. It's made to.
Yeah, those are, I'd put that in the, effective teaching. What is how can you reach people? And then some people are so tied up in their misery that that's the level that you have to communicate with them. They're not going to hear anything.
Through the misery? You have to acknowledge their misery?
I think so. I think you have to acknowledge it and help them work through that. And some teachers are more effective than others in regards to that. And obviously, it's up to the student to figure out, what is my true question right now? Because you'll get a lot of people who say, well, I want to know the truth. But really what they want is, I don't want to be suffering. And I think that you got to acknowledge that. What's the thing that you're really looking for right now? Let's not say that enlightenment.
So tell the truth, that it's just I want to get rid of this
honest.
This mood that I have,
Yeah.
this like depressed mood, or this thing, this heavy weight that seems to be in the pit of my stomach, and tell the truth to that. Because I've heard maybe you or maybe some others around TAT talk about the true question. Is that something that Rose used to say? Find your question? Or is that just
I don't remember him talking about that. Mm-mm. It may have been implicit, but it wasn't explicit. But for me, it's very explicit. We talked about the natural koan. What's your natural koan? And that's what we're talking about. So what's the thing that's really driving your questioning at this point, driving your actions?
That's a couple of things that I want to go into, like what's your question, and then now you say a natural koan. So then what is that? Explain that a little, if you will.
Well, the idea of the koan, is, as I understand it, and I don't come from a Zen background, is the teacher would give the student a question. And the student was tasked with solving this question before they could move on to the next one. And the question would be designed to bring the student to perhaps to a point where they would have a breakthrough. They would have some sort of realization. And to me, every person is walking around with a koan naturally. There's a question that will drive them to their next, if you want to think of the path that's moving from level to level, will drive them to the next level, or drive them to the next stage, or the next point of becoming. People talk about along the path we change. We become something other than we were, or we peel away what is covering what we are. Well, what's the question that will peel away the next layer of illusion? And we have the question, but it's a matter of being honest about what is it really.
I'm only starting to understand that. It's actually coming to me as very beautiful. That, we're driven by some kind of a belief structure, and our question is that true? And usually it's subconscious, so it's underneath there, and it's got a robotic action, because being subconscious, we haven't really brought out what is our question. That's what I'm hearing you say, and I think it's really very beautiful. In other words, you delve into the subconscious, you pull out the thing that comes out first. It doesn't have to be the right question or the wrong question, just one of them. And it's in a way, what it is a belief structure, and in a way that kind of that fires us up, because it's kind of like the base of the story that we tell ourselves. And then within that story are all our feelings, moods, emotions, and triggers. And somehow, if we can pull one of those out of our unconscious and just start to examine it, we're going to see that it's out of date. It's a conceptual, fixed thing, and it's not really keeping up with the pace of my life. And maybe it'll weaken and not weaken its grip on us, and then there'll be maybe another one, and it's
Exactly.
not really that important which one comes out, and we don't have to really stress over like which is the right question or which is the one question. It just means to see, but I mean, even to find that question, it takes presence to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes a little bit of pulling back from your story and a whole string of concepts, which are your suffering. You need to pull back a little bit from your suffering to even find that question.
And that's what happens as a person goes along, is their ability to be present or pull back from the story increases as they progress, which is terrible word, apparently.
Yeah.
But as they
get some experience under their belt, of loosening. Really, it's kind of a loosening. In other words, I kind of approach it oftentimes as try to restory a few things, not to find the right story or a better story, but just to realize that each story has its own effect. And then that engenders a loosening. And then from that, more presence can come. Presence can be here. But it's hard to be present and anxious at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to preach some kind of a balance where you'd take 5 minutes of contentment. Other people say 20 minutes twice a day of meditation, but I would just say, try on an outfit of relief and just see how it feels. Model relief. I'm relieved for just 5 minutes a day or something, and see it. I mean, that it's all false, that really my suffering is more important than any kind of relief, but just model it for a second.
Yeah, I agree. You gotta find some point of relative sanity, a baseline, if you will,
a neutral
to begin.
Line, some kind of neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Put your car in neutral every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. And that's different for different people. Where that place is or how it comes about. Well, that's where the student, if you will, has to do some experimenting. If you say, well, this is what you do, for 10 minutes, you sit down in a chair and you look at a candle. Well, that's a generic formula. Well, you've got to try that, but then try some variations. Figure out, take a walk, go to the park, go to a movie. It may be going to a movie is the place that gives you the space.
No way, man. That doesn't work. That's not where there's shit.
I don't know.
No, but look, okay, here's the objection. See, you say, okay, like, you got an instrument. I want you to put it in neutral 3 times a day.
Dig a hole.
Before meals or something like that. And they'll say, but, okay, what could the objection be? But neutral isn't the truth. It's false neutral. What's real is my suffering. What's real is the pit of my stomach. What's real is I'm a jerk and I've got a ton of obligations, and I can't make them. And it all depends on me. I'm carrying the load of the world on my shoulders, And there can be a refusal to actually want to try on neutral and try it, To put this garment on. It's called relief. And just try it out. Later, when you solve all your problems, I want you to be prepared so you know how to be relieved.
Well, I don't quite follow your modeling and the objection that a person might have to finding 5 minutes of sanity in a day.
I mean, what could they do? Sooner or later, they got to go with it and say, okay.
Well, that's what I would say.
They'll just laugh and drink and say, okay, I'm relieved now. And I said, okay, that's fine. When we leave, you can go hard again. Yeah,
peace be with you.
Right.
You keep banging your head against the wall and come back in a few months or a year and see if you are more willing to listen then.
We should interview, one guy was here that works with autistic, and he says that's what they do. They bang their head on the wall. Headbangers. They got it. We should do a movie like that, or an interview with a headbanger, and then put that up and say, here's our typical seeker. Sometimes it really works to see things that are really overdone, that are exaggerated. And then you say, oh my God.
That's what I might become someday. If I keep down my present path.
You're right. Feels better. That's because it feels better. Banging my head feels way better than living this life.
Yeah, speculating to what it's like to be an severely autistic person. In some way, it's a relief from an alternative. All action is, I think. Any direction we head in some way, no matter how crazy it may seem, it's better than an imagined alternative or an immediate experience of reality around us. Better for who? Well, that's the real question.
We talked about modeling. There's a model of how we should be and we should behave and we should think and we should... what we are, actually. There's a model to that, and we're fitting into it. Let's talk a little bit about being a man. What in the hell is a man?
Well, really, a man is to be a man is to simply be true to one's deepest self. I don't know a simpler explanation of it. If you are that, the action that arises will be the appropriate action, and you will be a man.
So a man is like honesty personified?
Yeah. Of course, it's the same definition of a woman. To be a woman is to be true to one's deepest self.
But in order to do that, you have to ruffle a few feathers.
Well,
you have to go against the current, maybe. You have to find your own current.
Always, because you're surrounded by people who don't, in general, don't want any part of being true. They want exactly what you were talking about earlier. They want to just keep playing the roles. This is my role, and your role is, my role is bank teller. Your role is making deposit in the bank, and we will go through a set of standard interactions in order to make the deposit. And if you start to come out of that role, well, I will be confused and anxious. Get back in your role, please. You're asking me to relate on some other level. I'm uncomfortable.
So we have expectations, and then many have expectations on us. And that's the current of the major stream of called my society. And somehow, I guess our first step is that we can relax our expectations on others.
Well, here we get back to, you mentioned the Sangha earlier, the group, I think. And I was, my spiritual youth, my spiritual teachings as a youth, well, I was ingrained with the idea that you needed to find a group of people that you could work with and live with. And I think that is the simplest way to begin to escape from some of those roles. That at least in my free time, I will associate with people who are more willing to examine their roles and ask the same kinds of questions I am. So I'm not continually having to play as deep of a game as I normally am. So find friends to work with.
You're very blessed. I don't know if very many people find that a group where you can let down your...
I didn't realize that 20 years ago. And now I...
Let down your hair.
Because even in spiritual groups, many spiritual groups, there's an expectation.
Oh, way more. Are you
will
kidding?
Act like this, and
worse.
It may be worse. Yeah, you would know better than I, because you've been through too many more groups than I have, I'm sure.
There's a protocol,
Yeah.
And people get uncomfortable. So then we said that, you have expectations of the world, and the world has expectations of you, and maybe a first step is to release your expectations of the world or of the other. And then you said, okay, I found a group where they didn't have that many expectations of me. They were just going to let me be Shawn, and that's it. And but maybe they don't. So then what we have is to confront people that expect us to be in a certain way, and somehow still be open toward them, and that is kind of like the storm of our life, basically, is the expectation. It's the tsunami of expectations is rolling toward us, and somehow how we handle that is the storm of our life, right? And most of us run from that.
Yeah,
we run like hell from it, hide from it, condemn it, project it, and I don't know. What's the...
well, I'll quote Rose, because he had the one sentence answer, and he said, "You're not that damn important." It's the first thing to realize. You're not that damn important, so you can relax a little bit.
Now, how does that relate? Because I'm saying that a tsunami of expectations is rolling toward you, and then let's stay with the old question too, like you're a man.
Well,
and then what do you do? I mean, what is the deal?
That tsunami of expectations that's rolling towards you is asking for a response from you.
Right. It says it actually wants to mold you and wants you to be in your mold. Stay in your mold.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're not that important means that what happens in that interaction is not that important, because it's our self-image that demands our responses to fit the expectations that are being called forth. I mean, that's why we respond in artificial ways. It's because we have the image, we have a feeling of status, we have a role that we imagine that we play, and
I'm not totally getting it. I'm kind of thinking that that's totally important. It's not important to the whole. Whether we're in our conditioning or whether we're out of it, maybe it's not that important. And the conditioning is kind of not personal, and so then our personal response to it. But in a way, how we react to that tsunami, I'm going to just stay with that image, that there's expectations are brought toward us and says, please be in a role and fulfill it well. And then it's not authentic to us. We don't really claim it. And we say, how can I spend my life doing this? Because I don't get much out of it. And it's hollow, and I don't want to fulfill this. But yet I don't want to ruffle other people's feathers and have them come down on me. But then, and I'm a man also, so then there's a lot of expectations toward me, especially in a young culture as you're growing up, that when people are trying to figure out their sexuality and what is manhood and what is the strength of a man, which is really unknown, and especially what's really unknown is the softness of a man, really totally unknown. And that's why I ask you the question, because you seem to be a man for all seasons. To me, you seem a very loving and a very open man and a unique man, and that you've somehow solved the equation, that you're able to be how you are in this moment. And you exude a wonderful beauty. You're very beautiful, in what comes to me, and the joy of me talking with you. And so then somehow you've solved this thing. I don't know, am I putting too much on you, or am I saying too much, or is it really true? Do you feel comfortable?
Well, I have to go back to your question, which was, why would one respond to an expectation that was not in line with their feeling of their truest self? Why would one do that?
We always respond. You respond with it or against it or something or neutral, or how do you do it? I mean, the whole world is begging an answer. What do I do? I'm up against a wall and the world is weird to me. How do I do it? How come you're so graceful? How did you do it?
Well, perhaps what you're responding to is an after effect or side effect of, as you would say, being here. And that's the first thing, is to discover what is here. Literally, what is here in this space.
So it's kind of like a catch-22, because in a way, when you're at ease, you can allow yourself to be here. And when you're here, you can be at ease.
That sucks, doesn't it?
Give us a break. Give us the breakthrough. Come on. Stand and deliver. Yield this info, Let's have it. I'm putting it to you.
You're right in that, like we were saying earlier, well, there has to be, we have to find some relative baseline of what you're just saying, sanity or peace or being in here, in order to delve deeper. To me, it's a delving deeper within. And what enables us to delve deeper within is changing and becoming more present. But then we get into the idea, well, is an awakening, is it gradual or is it sudden? Right? The age-old debate in the Zen schools 1,000 years ago, the school of sudden enlightenment and the school of gradual enlightenment. What's really going on? Well, it's both. We do gradually change, but it's not a matter of we're 90% free, we're 95% free, and then we're 100% free. But we get taste and we get moments of a superior position or perspective. And then one day we relax completely. And we're flooded and swept away. So it's a lot of effort to get to effortlessness.
One day, we relax completely. without a shadow, without a trace, without a wake. One day. Of course, the school of effort, or the school of sudden enlightenment, is a school of effort, and a school of pain, and a school of suffering. And it's a school of bursting.
Yeah. I can only speak from my experience, right? I can only speak from what I went through, and then I can speculate about what other people went through. And so that's the model, if you will, that I operate from and I try to communicate from. And if a person feels some resonance with it, then perhaps they should listen some more. And if a person doesn't feel any resonance with it, then find something that you do feel resonance with.
Sometimes presenters lay out a path or lay out a kind of a structure. You can somehow deconstruct effort, maybe, by something, and it kind of, sometimes you bob into it and bob out of it. And then, or whatever, whatever their path is that they're suggesting. But then in the end they say, then at a certain day or a certain time, something really took me by surprise. So there's a very limited correlation between what they're saying or what they were doing and that thing that took them by surprise, right? I mean, right. It doesn't have anything to do with it, right? I mean, why are they teaching something that and then saying, well, in the end, it took me by surprise? Because it means there is no cause and effect. That wasn't a path to get anywhere. The only way you can say a path is some gradual evidence that I'm approaching. Yeah. I'm approaching. But if something took me by surprise, well, then, it's not. How can you teach?
Right.
You just sit and be prepared to get taken by surprise. There's no preparation for that, is there? So there's the bursting school, and then there's just do something, whether it's meaningful or meaningless. Just live life, and then something takes you by surprise.
You're airing the dirty laundry, perhaps. I do like, though, someone like Bart Marshall, who I guess he was actually quoting Richard Rose, that we're trying to make ourselves more accident prone. What can you really do if there is nothing being done, no effort being applied? Well, and I have this sense too that when you look at people who've had awakenings, there was action taking place. There seem to be very, very few cases of someone who never read a spiritual book or never meditated or never thought a profound thought in their life, who suddenly was plunged into an awakening experience.
Lots. There's lots of them. A lot of people said when I was 8, blah, blah, blah. I knew there was something more when I was 5. I remembered I was being made into a human, I remembered I wasn't this guy. I wasn't this individual. There's lots of people that without any kind of a process, and somehow that keeps coming around and around.
Well, it keeps coming around, and what do?
Well, that engenders them to read the books, probably.
There you go. And that's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that the common person has never had a feeling of profundity. Yeah, what many children, as you're saying, have memories of that. And the memory causes some longing, what do you do with that?
In a way, I've been lucky because I haven't had a lot of these heavy-duty experiences that I yearn to repeat. No, but I have had some experiences, and almost every time I've had an experience, I have had the thought that I always knew that.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had those ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I never baked the cake. I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know what to do with what to make of those ingredients. I mean, no cake was forthcoming, but yet the sugar and the eggs and the flour were always there.
Well, that's why we use words like unraveling. We're not baking a cake, we're finding the ingredients. We're not creating something. We're pulling it to pieces. And mangling metaphors.
Mangling metaphors. I met you a few short months ago, and I really always wanted to have this conversation and get closer with you.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm glad we had the chance.
So you're an author, writer, poet, videographer, storyteller.
I try to dabble in a few things, yeah. They really catch my interest.
Inspiration to many people, even your ninth graders.
I don't know about that. I think they mainly think I'm just kind of goofy.
That's a freedom right there. You know, if somebody's willing to be goofy.
You're right. That's something
That's a freedom right there.
That's why I got into that line of work, was to learn how to, in a sense, be more like a child. I consciously chose working with children because I thought I could learn something from it that would help me.
Are you about to move?
Thinking about it, yeah. Don't know where.
Now the world's so small that you can't get away from it. You can't get out of our clutches. We got you.
It is. It's tiny world now.
I hope you can fall in love with Shawn as much as I am falling in love with Shawn. And I hope you can see him many, many times. Be a part of whatever he's into and the communities that he's building and an integral part of. Shawn, I really thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for bringing all your gear out here, setting this up.
Totally my pleasure. Shawn Nevins.